Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. I am Assistant General Director of IICA. We are here for another session on the U.S. Fisma. I am here with an expert from the Food and Drug Administration, Mr. Jason Cornell from Portland, Oregon. One of the best cities in the United States. This is something very important for IICA and for all our stakeholders and growers and authorities that are trying to export produce in a safe manner to the United States. When I used to work at the United States Department of Agriculture, food safety was very important for us with our trading partners abroad, but not only with them, but also within our own society. While I was there, we experienced some cases of salmonella outbreaks in lettuce, in melons, and there were a lot of problems with our trade. And part of the importance of this produce safety rule is to have a level playing field for all of us so that we can together build a safety culture, not only in the United States, but in all countries. We are already very grateful to the US FDA for working with IICA and with all of you so that we can have this food safety culture in Latin America and the Caribbean through the support of the US FDA and to work with our exports to the United States. With this and with the IICA, thanking IICA, I would like to offer the floor to Dr. Cornell from the US FDA. Jason?
Good morning or good afternoon for people from South America who are watching from farther east. Welcome to the 7th seminar of 7 in our series of online presentations about the produce safety rule, produce safety inspections, and the import process. My name is Jason Cornell, and I'm with the FDA here in Costa Rica in our Office of Latin America. So far, we've covered the history of the produce safety rule and what to inspect during a produce safety inspection. Today, we will cover the FDA import process, new import programs, and we'll finish with a brief introduction to the FDA's data dashboard. Today, we have Shelly Rios, a consumer safety officer specializing in imports, speaking from her office in Puerto Rico. She is a great resource and a bastion of knowledge, and I encourage you to ask any questions that you may have at the end. We hope our seminars have been helpful for you all. Thank you very much. And Shelly, you may begin presenting at any time.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Oh, yes, yes. Okay, fine. Thank you. I apologize. Good morning. I am Shelly Rios. As Jason already said, I am a consumer safety officer. The import at the Office of Regulation Affairs. I am located at the Puerto Rico office. At the Division of Import Operations. Today I will provide an overview of the import of regulated products into the United States of America. We will also discuss the import process itself, right from when the customs agent or the customs broker submits an entry until it is received by the FDA and provides import alerts in English. And I will discuss what these are, how the products are added or deleted from these alerts, and what it means to be subject to a detention for physical examination. The FDA is divided in 5 import divisions in the Office of Import Operations. We have the import division in the southeast, the one in the northeast, another one on the northern border, the western division, and southwest. At the bottom of the screen, there's a link that will take you to the interactive screen I'm showing you, and where you can find more information on these divisions. This is contact information, also depending on the division and where your product may be entering the U.S. There will be contact information and all the offices that would be working to enter your products into the United States. The FDA regulates a large variety of products, including food products, animal and human medications, and medical devices for human use, electronic products that emit radiation, cosmetics, food supplements, and tobacco products. Although the FDA regulates products, it excludes some products that are regulated by the Federal Department of Agriculture. Over the last decade, there has been an increase in the import of products regulated by the FDA. In 2019, there were 45.2 million lines that were offered for import versus 2019, where there were less than 20 million offered. Section 801 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act covers the importation of regulated products into the United States. Products offered for import regulated by the FDA and that appear to be in violation may be rejected based on the appearance of a violation. The entry of products regulated by FDA may be declined if products do not meet the laws and regulations applicable to that product. Some reasons why we can reject a product is that the product is adulterated. That means that the product is contaminated, is not safe, or does not meet the applicable standards. And another reason could be that the product is misbranded. In other words, it could contain deceitful or false information. It is a new medication that is not approved, for example, and its sale is banned in the country. The key to all of this is that it appears to be a violation. Most importers contract customs brokers when they are going to request the importation of products into the United States. Customs brokers are representatives of with the agencies and allow them to send the necessary information for entries and whatever payment needs to be made to customs. Customs and board Sftp has a list of agents on the website, on brokers, as we can see on this website. Once the entry is sent to customs, if the product is regulated by the FDA, customs sends us that entry for evaluation purposes. Any product that has general and some specific requirements according to the type of product. For example, human and animal feed have a requirement for a prior notice, in English called prior notice. This is a requirement in the public health law and preparedness for bioterrorism, the Public Health Security and Bioterrorism Preparedness and Response Act of 2002. And we oftentimes refer to this law as the 2002 Bioterrorism Law. This prior notice gives the FDA an opportunity to examine and assess the information, as well as to inspect and intercept contaminated food products before they arrive in U.S. ports. The objective is to prevent the public health emergencies and terrorist attacks. Once the entry is submitted and is forwarded to the FDA, the process is automated. 100% of the entries are examined through the PREDICT process. PREDICT means predictive risk-based evaluation for dynamic import compliance targeting. PREDICT is designed to calculate a risk for each product line based on the available information. Some calculations are based on the product inherent to the risk, the quality of the data submitted to the agency, a track record of compliance of the companies and the line and the product. Here we can see the compliance report of the product and any inspection made to the manufacturer or other firms associated to that entry. The system also evaluates whether the product or the firm is subject to any alert and sees all the different information provided. The PREDICT evaluation may result in allowing entry or to forward it for a manual inspection by an FDA employee. If it is sent to a consumer's onto an entry reviewer, they are consumer safety officers that are trained to assess the information such as the entry data. The data entry shows the production country, the name of the manufacturer carrier, the product code, the FDA product code, compliance statements, et cetera, The PREDICT results are also assessed, as well as whether they are subject to an import alert or detention without physical examination. They examine the database, and through historical knowledge, then the final decision is made on that product. The entry reviewer may, based on his view, release the goods, or may obtain more information, requesting documents that are typically the invoice, the transportation or the bill of lading, or further information through collecting a sample or examining the product. And another alternative, the other decision by the reviewer, is to request detention of the product. This may be based on the information provided at entry, and perhaps it does not meet some of the entry requirements, or maybe it is subject to an import alert. If the FDA, if we release the product, the importer may distribute the products. Releasing the product does not prevent the FDA from taking any action against the product in the event they find the product is in violation of a regulation. Even if the product is released, FDA maintains jurisdiction under the domestic law. So while it is under the importation status, the importation laws apply under Section 801 of the Act, but once released, it is considered a domestic product and therefore it is subject to domestic laws. If the FDA decides to obtain additional information through examination, the product may be examined or sampled. Physical examination includes to detect or find a filth, and that helps determine whether there could be a contamination by rodents or insects, or examination to see decomposition, determining whether the product could have been stored at inappropriate temperatures, or a poor management is handling during storage and transportation to determine if it was mishandled to such a level that it may produce changes in the product quality. And there is also examination to determine misbranding, ensuring, for example, the font size and the language, if the colors, the ingredients, everything is declared, or if there is any allergen that needs to be declared and is not being declared. As to language, the label must be in English, and there is an exception for products that will only be distributed in Puerto Rico, where Spanish would apply then. But typically, the products must be basically, I have seen the products in both languages. The FDA also carries out surveillance sampling, headed by the centers. In the case of the manufacturing products, it would be the food produce center. These samples are examined by laboratories, FDA laboratories. If through a physical examination, a product appears to be in violation, then the reviewer sends a report to the division compliance brand. The officer may determine whether to approve or detain, and there will be a notice of FDA action issued. If products are detained, then here we start the detention and hearing process. This is where it begins. If the compliance officer corroborates there is no violation, or that there is a violation, but at his discretion, he may allow release with comments. So the compliance officer may say there is no violation, but there may be a minor violation. I'm not going to give you examples really at this time, because it really depends on the officer. It is at the discretion of the officer to determine whether to release the product or not. If the FDA detains a shipment, the importer has the right to submit testimony. That means to provide further evidence to overcome the appearance of violation. And this is known, as I said, as the detention and hearing process. There are meetings with compliance officers, and the person responsible for the goods can present evidence to support admissibility of the product. The deadline to respond is included in the FDA notice of action, but it is usually given to the importer. The importer is usually given 10 days to respond. During the process, the importer may submit testimony or evidence to overcome the appearance of violation. The necessary evidence will depend on the violation itself. Private laboratory analytical reports may be submitted, and sometimes these reports are used for products detained under an import alert. The analytical reports do not apply to all types of violation, though, as would be, for example, violations to the good manufacturing practices or best manufacturing practices, which in this case could require instead an inspection. They may submit a reconditioning proposal, for example, if it is a manufacturer of medication that is not registered, for example. Well, then registering the firm may put the shipment in compliance with the regulations. That is to correct the problem, basically. And as I said, we can also submit a reconditioning proposal explaining what will be done to put the product in compliance, eliminating the contamination or change the label or turn the product into something not regulated by the FDA. And this is something that is discussed with the compliance officer. There is no specific rule. In the detention and hearing process, the importer and the compliance officer examine the different alternatives, and the compliance officer will determine how to move on. Detention is an administrative process as far as the FDA is concerned, which is something very different from the CBP detention. There is not a physical hold of the product. Section 801B of the Act allows the owner or consignee to take possession of the articles. That is, they can transport it to a warehouse or what have you, but they must have a bond in place with the CBP before doing so. If during the detention process and hearing the appearance of violation is not overcome, or if the product cannot be brought into compliance, then the FDA may refuse the admission of that product. If a product is refused, the importer may decide whether to destroy the process or to re-export it. At this time, Customs then issues a redelivery notice. Depending on what the importer may decide, if they decide to destroy, well, then the FDA and or CBP verify the destruction of the product. If the importer decides to export, then CBP corroborates that. And the importer has 90 days to export or to destroy. If the products are not exported or destroyed, the importer may incur in a fine liquidated damages, which is 3 times the declared value at entry. The FDA does not cannot seize the products unless it is under CBP authority of law. Now, import alerts. These inform the field that the agency has sufficient evidence to detain goods without physical examination. This means that the entry reviewer may refer this product to a compliance group without even taking a sample of the product. A firm product or importer may be subject to detention without physical examination after determining the appearance of violation based on previous shipments where information has been gathered by local offices through physical examination of the product. That shows that appearance of violation. And import alerts cover evidence of inspection. I before mentioned that The firms that enter an import alert due to a violation to best manufacturing practices, those enter because there was an inspection and there were violations that were sufficient to add to the import, add these to the import alert. There are other sources of information used, foreign governments, states, and other agencies. These violations could be related to the product, the manufacturer, the carrier, showing that the product could be in violation of the regulations. When a firm or product is subject to detention without physical examination, the importer must ensure that the product being offered for import is in compliance with the FDA laws and regulations. It is important to highlight that the import alerts do not create new requirements. These include the firms and the products for which there is available evidence supporting the appearance that the products are adulterated or misbranded.
Dos tipos de alertas.
There are two types of alerts, the firm alerts and national alerts or countrywide alerts. Firm alerts cover specific problems. For example, it could cover a problem of pesticides for human or veterinary foods. The problem is that the violation would exceed the parameters in pesticides in food. It might include specific products. It was sampled and it was concluded that any given fruit exceeded the parameters for pesticides and firms. So a given fruit exceeded pesticides parameters, and this comes from firm A. In that case, the firm is added their product and the issue to the import alert. I have already discussed the alerts of firms that are added per inspection, but also these enter into this type of alert for firms. These are known as red list alerts because they are added to the list that we have for detention without physical examination. National alerts, on the other hand, cover geographical areas that are specific. For example, if there was a salmonella outbreak and the investigation discovers that this outbreak is due to failures in a specific country, an import alert may be created covering for that geographical area. So all cantaloupe coming from that country is going to be subject to detention, without physical examination. In this case, this is where the private laboratory analysis pitch in. In this case, the importer may show if the product is in compliance or not, contains salmonella or not. In this case, there are some procedures so that when it has been proven that a given manufacturer does not have any salmonella issues, then if parameters are met, they may go back and enter into the green list. Once the manufacturer is in the green list, it is no longer subject to detention without examination. There are approximately 2016 import alerts, but this figure is constantly changing. Sometimes some are added, others are deactivated. You can take a look at a few references to know a little bit more about import alerts. And firms or importers may request removal from detention without physical examination. However, to remove a firm, a product, or an importer, FDA has to trust that the cause for this situation has been eliminated. The decision of removing a product or an importer from detention without physical examination using evidence that establishes that the conditions that yielded to the appearance of the violation have been already solved and corrected, and that the agency totally trusts that future entries will be in full compliance. In general, the request or the petition to remove these products from detention without physical examination have an evidence of shipments without a violation, but it generally depends on local law. If these are violations due to manufacturing practices, in this case, inspection will be required. If firms and products have been added due to labels that have been changed, the analysis by a private lab may be requested. Also, if they appear to be subject to detention without physical examination, but perhaps if this is not the specific product that entered into that detention, the importer may submit documents proving that the product is not subject to that alert. We have to go to the specific alert. I'm going to move back one slide. The fifth point here where it says there is a reference to Chapter 9 of the FDA Regulations Procedures Manual. Regulatory Procedures Manual, there are some guides that need to be subject to be able to present the petition, but each import alert is at the end here, at the end of this slide. There in that link that's where we have the import alert lists, and it also provides information of what is required for a specific alert. And that would be it for me. Now, questions?
We are going to take the questions at the very end. So if you can please wait until after the next presentation. We did receive a few that we'll have for you then.
Gracias.
Thank you.
All right, so the next presentation will be given by myself. But before I begin, I would like to once again thank IICA's amazing staff for hosting these webinars and making them extremely successful. We have had thousands of people throughout the world watch these webinars live, and we look forward to making them available online for everyone to watch again or reference in the future. The final presentation is based on the common questions that FDA's Latin American office receives regarding imports, import programs related to Fisma, and questions about finding import data related to companies. As mentioned during the introduction, my name is Jason Cornell, and I work for the Office of Global Regulatory Operations and Policy for the FDA in Costa Rica. One of the most common inquiries we receive in the Latin American office's email inbox is about the Voluntary Qualified Importer Program, which is referred to as VQIP. There is a buzz or rumor in the import world that if you pay money, your product will never be inspected ever again, and that this program is the key to accessing the United States market. Well, I'd like to address, correct, and clarify that rumor. First, though, I want to clarify the definition of an importer. In the final rule, FDA defined an importer as the U.S. owner or consignee of an article of food that is being offered for import into the United States. If there is no U.S. owner or consignee of an article of food at the time of U.S. entry, the importer is the U.S. agent or representative of the foreign owner or consignee at the time of entry, as confirmed in a signed statement of consent to serve as the importer under this subpart, which is 21 CFR 1.5. In short, I am referring to the U.S. importer of record or the U.S. agent that is legally responsible for the shipment throughout this presentation. So what is VQIP? It's a voluntary fee-based program that provides expedited review and import entry of human and animal foods into the United States for participating importers. Both consumers and importers will ultimately benefit from this program due to increased commerce times or increased entry times. To participate, the importers must meet eligibility criteria and pay a user fee that covers costs associated with the FDA's administration of the program. These requirements are extensive, but I will not go into them since I'm only providing an overview today, and I'm focused more from the grower and packer perspective. I want to remind everyone again that this program is for the importer or the U.S. agent of the foreign owner. So a grower, a processor, or a manufacturer outside of the United States would not be the firm that is taking part in the VQIP registration and requirements. So what are the benefits of VQIP? Why should someone pay an extra fee just to have their business, their audit process, and their company scrutinized even more than usual by the FDA? Well, since the FDA is trusting that a VQIP firm is already conducting thorough examination, auditing, and inspections at all of their customers' facilities, the FDA will in turn limit examinations and or sampling of VQIP food entries during the following situations. There's 4 cause situations. Examples of this could be during an investigation of an outbreak or illness, or maybe a referral from another government agency such as Customs and Border Patrol because they noticed a truck's reefer or cooling system is not operational. Or the FDA would sample to obtain statistically necessary risk-based microbiological samples when building a product risk profile based on non-biased surveillance sampling. This sounds complicated, but this means that the FDA needs to sample new products that we might not know anything about. We trust the VQIP company, but if a product has not been analyzed in the past, we would still take samples to help ensure it meets the requirements of our laws and regulations. And then finally, to audit a small percentage of import shipments covered by VQIP to verify that the products declared in a VQIP entry are consistent with products covered in the VQIP application. And then additionally, these samples will be sent to a laboratory that can process them in a priority manner. But from a grower, packer, exporter perspective, even though the program does not completely exempt an importer's products from being sampled, they will have faster importation times and preferred sampling locations, such as the consignee location and not a cold storage at the port of entry. All of this means faster access to the market and less overall costs, since you'll not have to pay a third-party bonded warehouse or other facility to hold your goods for sampling. As such, from a grower or supplier's perspective, the most important question you can ask your importer is whether they are a VQIP participant or if they plan to be one in the future. To learn more about the VQIP program and all of the details that weren't covered here, and there are quite a few, you can go to fda.gov, type VQIP in the search box at the upper right side of the web page, and you'll be directed to the program's homepage. Also, I've provided the phone number and the email address on the slides for the program managers. And the last item I want to mention about VQIP is that the full guidance for industry has been translated to Spanish and is on the website as well. The title of the document is La Programa Voluntario de Importadores Calificados de la FDA. The second most common inquiry we receive in the Latin American office is about the foreign supplier verification programs, also referred to as FSVP. This rule requires that importers perform certain risk-based activities to verify that food imported into the United States has been produced in a manner that meets applicable U.S. safety standards. This rule is the product of a significant level of outreach by the FDA to industry, consumer groups, the agency's federal, state, local, tribal, and international regulatory counterparts, academia, and other stakeholders. So what is the purpose of SFVP? Well, as mentioned, this requires importers to take steps to ensure food they import is as safe as food produced in the United States. More specifically, importers must provide adequate assurances that foreign suppliers produce food using processes and procedures providing the same level of public health protection as FSMA preventative controls or produce safety inspections. Food is not adulterated or misbranded, such as an allergen labeling. But since this is an overview, I will not cover all of the requirements and exemptions, but it is worth noting that under the modified FSVP rule, certain small farms are not covered under the produce safety rule because they average 25,000 or less in annual produce sales, or because they meet other requirements for a qualified exemption. But most important, what is it that a farm, a packing house, or a manufacturer should know? First, what exactly is a foreign supplier? A foreign supplier is an establishment that manufactures or processes the food or harvests the food that is exported to the United States without further manufacturing or processing by another establishment, except for an activity of de minimis nature. Responsibility for compliance in FSVP lies with the US-based FSVP importer. A common question we get is whether or not being SFVP compliant will stop a shipment at the border, and the answer is no. FSVP is not enforced on a shipment-by-shipment basis at ports of entry. However, foreign suppliers can help FSVP importers comply, and this is the most common scenario that we hear about in our office. A US company that imports my product is asking me for documents about my company. What should I do? My first recommendation is to get to know your SFVP importer, especially before they're being inspected by the FDA. During an inspection, they're under pressure and they might not be communicating clearly with you about what the FDA actually wants to see, and thus they might say something like, send me everything you have in writing about your company, when they actually don't need all of that information, and that causes the confusion and the inquiry to our office. Second, increase communication with your importer if possible. Get to know the company purchasing your products regularly. And then finally, if they do ask, supply food safety information if requested by the FSVP importer. Not necessarily your operational guides, your recipes, your proprietary information, but your food safety information. That's what they are looking for. And for more information on FSVP, you can go to fda.gov/FSMA. There is also a submit question section under the Contact Us tab. These are the experts that can best answer the FSMA related questions about the SFVP program. Now I want to move on to something that is very exciting and new to the FDA. FDA receives a large number of inquiries regarding foreign inspections and their results, recalls in the United States, import statistics for countries and commodity, import refusals, VQIP importers, and even third-party program participants, which is another program that's not covered today. And then just data in general. These inquiries will be from governments looking to improve their domestic industry or that regulate exports, companies looking for new suppliers of ingredients and want to find out any regulatory history, or even students looking to write papers at university. Someone or a team at FDA who was overwhelmed with these inquiries has developed a great tool that has taken all of this information, which is otherwise available under the Freedom of Information Act and through directives to improve transparency to the public, and they've made it available online. Now, please note that this is a very cursory overview and that the data dashboard is a tool that you need to get in and work with and to explore. You need to push buttons, click on data sets, and really get comfortable with it. It's user-friendly, but it does take a little bit of time. So I'm going to start with a very common inquiry of how can we learn more information about import refusals for a particular country or a particular product from what country, and how has that changed over time? If you click on the import refusals link on the data dashboard homepage, it will proceed to a web page that looks similar to this. From here, you can apply any of those filters that I mentioned, such as fiscal year, the legal name of the company, the product category, the country, or even which division or port locations that refuse the product in the United States. After you select all of the categories that you're interested in, you will scroll down and you'll be presented with a table that looks like this.
Estos datos incluyen de izquierda a derecha el identificador del establecimiento de la firma del EFA, el nombre legal, dirección, el código de producto de la FDA y la descripción, la fecha de rechazo del producto, cuál división rechazó el producto, incluso el número de entrada de la FDA, si se tomó una muestra, si se realizó un análisis en un laboratorio privado, igual que los cargos o los costos de rechazo. Esto está disponible en un formato Excel y hay un recuadro que tiene los códigos de rechazo que explica cosas como, por ejemplo, fue rechazado por plaguicidas, contaminación microbiológica, falta de registro o cualquier otra cosa.
We're going to take a quick break. Apparently there is an audio technical issue on the Spanish channel, so please be patient. All right, so I'm just going to cover this slide again real quick. The data from the import refusals tab, it includes from left to right, the FDA's firm establishment identifier, the legal name and address, the FDA product code, and the description of the shipment. It also has the date refused, which division refused the product, the entry number, whether there was a sample collected, was there private lab analysis conducted, and the refusal charges. All of this data is available to download in the Excel format, and there's also a chart that has the refusal codes, such as pesticides, microbiological contamination, lack of registration, or something else. This tool obviously can be extremely useful for a lot of reasons. Every refused FDA shipment since 2002 is available in this data. And I just want to point out that the firms on the screen that you're looking at right now were not chosen to represent anything in particular. They were the default top entries when I accessed the data dashboard last. You will have different information based on the search parameters and filters that you select. Similarly, recall data is available. This can be sorted by commodities such as drugs, devices, tobacco, or foods. The data can be further refined by year and classification, which equates to the severity of the recall. The recall data goes back to 2012. And as you can see, FDA handles around 2,700 recalls per year, which is part of our commitment to public health and trying to ensure only safe products reach the consumer. This can also help conceptualize why the FDA has programs such as FSVP and product sampling. It might be a small convenience to have a product examined at the border, but a recall consumes exponentially more time and effort by the businesses and government agencies involved. Also available and commonly asked about are facility and farm inspections. The data available on the data dashboard goes back to 2009 and can show the total number of inspections per year as well as their classification, which you can see on the right. For clarity, the chart on the right shows the classifications of NAI, VAI, and OAI. An NAI inspection means no action indicated, or there was no Form 483 or 4056 issued for inspectional observations. This means the firm did a great job during their inspection. A VAI, or Voluntary Action Indicated Inspection, usually means one of the inspectional observation forms was issued, but the firm is being trusted to make corrections to the problems. And an OAI, or Official Action Indicated Inspection, is where a severe observation was made and the FDA is taking official action such as a warning letter, a recall, issuing an import alert, or some other action against the firm. Usually, OAI inspections are posted on fda.gov and can carry media attention, or the firm will receive inquiry from food associations, importers, government agencies, or other parties that are concerned about the inspection result. The actual data section about these inspections, for that section of the dashboard, like them all, it has a downloadable data set that can allow you to see when a firm was inspected, the classification that we talked about, any observations that were made at the firm, and what type of product area that they were inspecting. And then I want to point out that the last column, the product type, is important because there are many companies with similar names. So you might think you're looking at the correct food company when you're actually looking at a medical device firm. So make sure to check that last column and verify your data. So where to go and who to contact? The web page for the data dashboard is available at https .data-dashboard.fda.gov/ora/index.htm. But really, the easiest way to find the website is to go to your favorite search engine, such as Google, Microsoft's Bing, DuckDuckGo, or Baidu, and type FDA data dashboard. I believe it's the top return result for all of those search engines. And then lastly, you can also email the team that created and maintains this dashboard at fda-dashboard@fda.hhs.gov. And that is all we have for everyone today. Thank you for participating in all of these webinars. And now we are going to move on to questions. I am going to start with some of the questions that I received, and then we will move to the Spanish channel. So Shelley, we received a question about what is the difference between a shipper or a carrier for FDA imports?
Bueno,
Hello, good morning. What is the difference between a shipper and a carrier for the FDA? Okay. Well, what we call the FDA shipper, that is the company, the firm, the one that sends the goods and that causes the movement in interstate trade. And that is different from the vessel itself, the carrier that is bringing the product to the facilities of the importer. What we are interested in is that that company that originated the movement of the product towards the United States.
Next question is, if a company or person contacts our business and says they are with the FDA or they represent the FDA, how do we verify that they are legitimate?
okay. Si es
Okay, if it regards imports, if this is a person that is asking about an importation, they can write to the FDA, MOPRTS, INQIRE at FDA, HHS.gov. That is FDA Imports Inquiry. Imports Inquiry at FDA, and that is the address. Ask for the name, the telephone number, and the person's contact information, and send an email to that address, and they can help you verify this person, whether that person is really from the FDA. We typically do not communicate, the import program does not typically communicate with the manufacturing company. We work through the broker, the customs broker. But if the case could happen, you could write there. If it were for a foreign inspection, I understand you can write to the Latin America office. Jason?
Yes, you can always write to the FDA's Latin American office as well. You can write to me directly at jason.cornell@fda.hhs.gov. Or if you search for the Latin American office on FDA's webpage, it brings up all of our general contact information as well. Another question we have for you, Shelley, is can you tell us a little bit more about the PREDICT scoring system and the factors that tell the FDA officers to sample our product?
Bueno,
What predict considers is the product track record. This is a dynamic process, and the information is consistently updated. It considers whether the product has been refused or rejected in the past, if it has been released, if the firm or the company, the manufacturer, has been found in violation in a previous inspection, if it meets the entry requirements, for example, as to food products, if the product, well, the whole process and company must be registered, the process must be registered, and PREDICT helps us with all that information. From what we see, the reviewer examines whether the product should be sampled or not based on his own knowledge and experience. There's nothing specific that will say you have to sample X product. It is based on all the information as a whole. And what will determine whether the reviewer would examine or take a sample of the product. I really cannot answer something more specific. It's a combination of factors, and it depends on the information available. The system basically provides all the information so that we can decide.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions about the data dashboard that I'm going to address. One question was about VQuip importers, and somebody wanted to know how many of those exist. And at this time, there's actually only one VQuip approved importer. The program is still very new, and only one company has been able to meet the qualifications. You can see who that VQuip importer is on the data dashboard webpage. Additionally, I received a question. It's related to how do I verify that somebody is with the FDA or represents the FDA? And the question is, my company has received multiple inquiries from companies saying that they are third-party audit approved, and that if I pay them money, my product will not be inspected at the borders anymore. First, I want to say that's not what the third-party audit accreditation program is about. It is not the VQuip program, which also doesn't guarantee that your product won't be sampled. But also, if you're questioning the legitimacy of the company contacting you, you can go to FDA's data dashboard and you can see who the approved or qualified third-party audit companies are. And I encourage you to really get educated about it before you engage those companies. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of bad people and companies that are acting in their own interest that are looking to get money from companies who don't know otherwise. Don't be afraid to contact the FDA's Latin American office or the appropriate program office with any questions.
Once the provider obtains an alert, what are the steps to take to get off that alert?
Shelley, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to take that? I will go ahead and answer this question. So each import alert is posted online at FDA's webpage, and it contains a few different sections. The first part describes the issue or why the import alert was written. The second part talks about why the action is being taken by the FDA. The third part lists all of the firms or businesses that are currently on the import alerts. And I do want to point out that there are multiple lists. There's the green list, which means the company is okay and not affected by the import alert. There's the red list, which means think like a stop sign. This company is on import alert and has a problem. And then the final section of the import alert addresses how a company can be removed or can have their case reevaluated by US FDA's compliance branch. The compliance branch is the decision-making group for regulatory actions. Sometimes this could include having to do private testing. Sometimes it can require submitting maybe a new HACCP plan or a food safety plan, or sometimes it might be more strict or harder to get off from, but nevertheless, it's evaluated on a case-by-case basis and is different for each import alert. But the bottom section of each import alert will have the contact information for the case officer and who to contact to get more information on how to be removed.
Buenas, Jason. Disculpa, es que había.
Good morning, Jason. I'm sorry, I had closed my mic. Jason already answered to the question perfectly well, but I would also like it to refer to the Regulatory Procedures Manual in Chapter 9, which includes information on what typically should be submitted in this request. We have section 9.8.15. It begins there in 9.8.15, but we also have 9.8.16, which talks about fresh produce. And there are several other sections to speak about specific cases that might help you determine what is it that you exactly need. What are the most frequent reasons for refusing fruit, milk, meat, citric products, and sweet products? I do not have exactly that statistic information, but if you wish to examine further the dashboard, play with that link that I gave you, and Jason gave you as well, perhaps that might help you determine that if you play around with that and research there. But I do not have the exact data. In the rejections page, why is it not specified what pesticide was found and the concentration?
Is a limited amount of information that we can put on the web page. That additional information, such as pesticides, the limit that was found, That can be requested separately through the Freedom of Information Act. And the FDA has a web page for that. You just can Google that or go to the website and type in FOIA. But it would be extremely data intensive to start putting all of the pesticide levels, because sometimes we'll find 7, 8, 9, or 10 chemicals in one test from one product. And so it would begin to be very cumbersome and hard to maintain online. But that information is available through the other channel of FOIA.
En la base de datos,
In the database that corresponds to firms associated to a refusal, why is there not compliance with the presence of pesticides in products? These are not specifically detailed. It is just said that refusal was due to a pesticide.
So a shipment for pesticides can be refused for a variety of reasons. Either the pesticide isn't approved on that particular commodity, or it could be a pesticide that is outright banned and not allowed in the United States, or it can be over the limit. For our refusal codes, it is generally just marked as one code on the refusal. And then the company themselves can receive the more detailed analytical package about what was found or discovered. And so this is just more general information for people to start with and begin the conversation. I think the data dashboard is also very new, and the feedback, such as having more information about the refusal, is really good. And that's something that we can put forward to the data dashboard team to let them know that industry people are interested in having this information. So I'll do that.
productos veterinarios.
Veterinary products refers to veterinarian use medication. What are the causes? What countries are the origin of rejected products? Veterinary products may be food and can also be drugs, medication. What are the causes for what? For I didn't quite get the question. I guess what are the refusal causes for veterinary products? Well, once again, I do not have that specific piece of information. I would have to look for it and request it. I do not have those statistics with me today. And for which products are there more sanctions found?
I believe that the highest number of detentions and refusals is detentions would be medical devices, and I believe foods has the highest number of refusals. Um, Remember, the FDA is looking at a risk-based system, and so they're looking for food, devices, drugs, commodities that are most likely to cause harm to people or vulnerable populations. And so I believe the most examinations and testings are with foods and medical devices, which also happen to be the two highest commodities that are imported.
¿Podría la FDA
Could FDA send a detention notification to the regulating entity of the country of origin at the same time that the importer is been notified? Notification is sent to the importer, to the customs agent, and to the owner, the consignee. Was that in relation to the refusal? Was that the question? Or detention? No, detention. Yeah, okay. That is sent to the importer, the consignee, the owner, and the customs broker. It is not sent to the country of origin. How to help the importer with the compliance of FSVP? What tools may I use?
Well, there's been quite a few training and outreaches that the FDA has done with IICA regarding train the trainer events and the on-farm readiness review for produce safety inspections. And, you know, meeting the requirements of the produce safety rule is part of the requirements to import food to the United States. And so how you can best help um, the FSVP importer or the person who's purchasing your goods for import is to work with them about what are the requirements, what do I need to do to make sure that I am meeting the food safety requirements for the United States. And they can either help you develop that program, put you in contact with the right people to help train, or develop your food safety plan.
¿Qué sucede cuando se detectan moléculas de
What happens when we detect molecules of chemical products that are not registered to be used in a product? Well, in that case, if they are not approved to be used, I understand that they are stopped and refused because they're not approved for that. But that needs to be worked out with the compliance officer who is working on that product line. When we're talking about the detention process, the detention and hearing process, where the product may be submitted to reconditioning, and it might be that it becomes in a product that is not regulated by FDA. So it all depends on the discussion that is being held with the compliance officer and the proposals discussed with the importer. What happens when there are recurrent refusals of a given product for different causes? If there is a recurrent refusal, well, depending on the import, if there's an import warning, that product or that firm might be added to the import alert list. Aside from that, well, if they continue sending it, it continues to be refused if there is no compliance with the requirements. But there is an import alert for a given problem for a given product, well, it definitely will be added to the red list, and it will be subject to detention without physical examination for future shipments. What does FDA expect from the academia in Latin American countries nowadays in relation to compliance with Fisma?
That is a really good question that um, I think is more complicated than what I can come up with an answer for spontaneously. I will say that FDA works with universities to put on food safety trainings. We collaborate with university researchers on food safety initiatives like whole genome sequencing or soil studies or related to other chemicals such as pesticides. Um, but I don't know of, or I cannot assuredly answer that there's a exact expectation from the universities. But I think that is a really good question to think about, and that could be addressed to the produce safety rule or the FSMA teams.
Para
To submit to private lab analytical tests as a witnessing for a shipment that has been subject to detention for an apparent violation. Is there a list of private labs that may perform these tests, or what characteristics should this lab meet so that these results are considered as valid? I don't believe there is a list of labs, but we do have resources for private laboratory testing. These are resources for sampling at private labs, which include the guidelines to be followed by private labs, and you may refer to that document to see what are the requirements for the private lab for the package. That's what I may answer in relation to private labs.
And additionally, that everything that Shelley said was correct. We do not have a list, but the laboratories need to be following the approved methods that the FDA recognizes. And that's when you work with a compliance officer to make sure that the sampling method, the testing method is all done correctly. I will also mention that there is a FSMA proposed rule on laboratory accreditation that you can read about online or at fda.gov. And like I said, it's a proposed rule, and ultimately it would mean that laboratories could become accredited and they would be required to follow standards that will be subject to FDA oversight. And if that rule is approved, this will create a list of approved labs that you could essentially go to help with import compliance.
¿Qué características
What characteristics or requirements must be met by an importer? What requirements must be met by an importer for FSVP? Is that the question? For FSVP?
I think if you want, you could address both a U.S. importer as defined in FSMA for FSVP, VQuip, and then if you're comfortable, we could address the difference between a CBP importer and an FDA importer, or I can do that afterwards.
Puedes contestar si desea, Jason.
Jason, you can go ahead and answer if you want to.
So under the FDA's Food Safety and Modernization Act, we refer to the importer as being a US-based person or company or owner, or it needs to be an agent or a person or a company working on behalf of the foreign company. And ultimately, this means there needs to be somebody in the United States that is responsible for the shipment. And by responsible, we mean who is it that the FDA can talk to, hold accountable, and work with regarding the compliance of a shipment. It can really be anybody as long as they're taking the legal responsibility. There's no certification, there's no licensing, there's no fee. It just has to be an entity that's taking responsibility. And I just want to clarify that that is the Fisma importer. Under US Customs and Border Protection law, as well as FDA, the importer of record does not necessarily have to be a US company. That term was redefined or specified for FDA use regarding FSMA. And so I just want to make that distinction that if you're talking with CBP or Customs and Border Protection, they will say the importer is whoever's responsible for the shipment, but they don't have to be in the United States necessarily. That is not the case for the FSVP importer related to FDA goods.
En la lista de IR
On the IIR list import refusal report, you talk about rejects or refusals under two microbiological aspects. One, it could contain and contains. Is the difference based on the microbiological analyses carried out by FDA? Could you repeat the question, please? On the IIR list, there is a mention of rejects or refusals based on two microbiological aspects. One, may contain, and two, contains. Does the difference depend only on the presence of microbiological analyses carried out by the FDA?
Import refusal report.
In the import refusal report, it would be based, if entry is refused, it is based on analyses carried out by FDA. I understand.
It's a import refusal code for may
Pues
contained.
se rechaza.
It may be rejected. If it is under appearance, it may be that the product has already entered under detention without physical examination, and then the FDA does not take a sample of the group of the product. So it could say the product was sampled because the product was offered for entry into the United States, was sampled. The microorganism was found, was detained and rejected. But if it already enters in import alert, then in that case, the FDA does not sample the product. That has been proven from previous shipments that there's appearance of violation, and then therefore it is rejected based on this appearance and no longer sampled.
FDA no le
Why does the FDA not send the regulating entity a notice on the detention of import into that country?
The US FDA, we work under the laws that our Congress passes, as well as the regulations that are derived or promulgated from those laws. And specifically, the law about notifying companies about a detention or a notice of sampling or a notice of action regarding imports, um, it's very specific on who we can send that to. And in those regulations, it specifically mentions, the owner consignee. Now, I will say that there was probably also, when this law was written 60, 70 years ago, there might have been also concerns about whether or not sharing that information was appropriate with a foreign government. And so we've never had that process because it's not in our laws to do so. I will say that the FDA also does have confidentiality commitments with certain countries, and we do share these notifications with those particular countries. And we can give them full details of the shipments. That way they can go back and address with the manufacturer, the grower, the company. But I think this new step where we're at least putting the data forward that we can, that is publicly available, like on the data dashboard, I think that's the first step towards making that change. But to answer the question, it's because FDA was never legally required to notify the foreign countries.
What happens if the importer, owner, broker does not respond to that notice within those 10 days defined by the FDA for response? Okay, if they do not. Okay. In that case, they have 10, yes, right, they have 10 days for that hearing. If there are no discussions with the compliance officer, well, then the FDA may reject entry of the product. During the detection and hearing process, the importer has a chance to decide what to do with the product. Export it, destroy it, refurbish it, or put it into compliance, bring into compliance. But if the importer does not respond, well, entry is declined or rejected.
Well, thank you everybody for coming to the webinar today. We have no more questions in either channel. This is finishing up the 7th and final webinar in this produce safety rule, inspection, and import series. Thank you, Shelly Rios, for making time to come and talk about imports today. Thank you everybody for attending these webinars. And you should be receiving notification in the future through the same channel that you receive these announcements for the webinars about when and where these will be posted, as well as the availability of the slide decks. That way you can review them or read them in the future. Thank you again, and have a great day.